Going to call the meeting of the Holyoke City Council's Finance Committee to order. We are doing a Zoom meeting as allowed under the COVID emergency open meeting law variations. Tonight we have a number of guests with us, but first I'd like to announce the Finance Committee. Myself, Joe McGiverin is chair. Councilor Jim Leahy at large.
Lacey.
No, take it easy. Councilor Sullivan at large, and Councilor Bartley, Ward 3. The fifth member of the Finance Committee has a family emergency tonight. Peter Tallman will not be with us. We are joined by other councilors, Councilor Tallman at the moment, and I believe that's it. Although I know a number of other councilors are going to join us before we're over with.
I'm here, Joe.
Councilor Murphy, I say. Okay. We're going to go pretty much in order, but we got a number of guests that have been pre-arranged in terms of where they are. There's one little ad that we're going to do in the beginning, but let's go to item number 1.
Make a motion, take it off the table.
Motion made second to take item 1 off the table. This is an order filed under the chair's name from Mass General Laws, Chapter 44, Section 53, that the City Council accepts the provisions of the PVPC CRCC grant and authorizes the establishment of a fund, other method appropriate for the accounting of the receipts and expenditures of all resources associated with said grant. Mr. Parent, our city engineer, is with us to walk us through this grant. Bob, if you could take it over, just give us how much the grant is for, are there any matches, and the details.
Certainly. The amount of this grant is $760,000. It is one of the grants that were received for multiple years through the Pioneer Valley Planning Commission, Connecticut River Cleanup Committee. It has no local match. It is to be fully expended in fiscal year 21. The total grant through Mass DEP that was awarded to Connecticut River Cleanup Committee was $1.5 million. So we are continuing to catch up in terms of getting our 1/3 of split of the historical funding through that program. So you can see we're a little bit over 1/3 of $1.5 million this year. We're just about caught up with the goal of getting fully caught up. So it's 1/3, 1/3, 1/3 next year. We have identified 2 projects to fund through that grant. The first and biggest piece of it, $485,000 out of the $760,000 would be to begin the first step of our next CSO related project. I believe I've told the council before that we submitted our draft long-term control plan to EPA. We identified 2 projects to complete in the next 20 years. There's many more projects to go beyond 20 years, but over the next 2 years, it's 20 years, 20 years, that there'd be 2 projects. One of them is in what we identify as the River Terrace area, which is what connects to CSO number 21. And the other one is in the Springdale area, which connects to CSO number 8. EPA has received those recommendations favorably, but they've asked us to try to get started on some of the initial work a little bit sooner. So in the interest of trying to basically keep EPA appeased, but not committing to anything final, because there's no agreements, there's no commitments, there's no additional orders in place at this point. We're looking to begin work on the River Terrace area, which, as you probably know, basically goes from River Terrace up to the Mount Tom access road, covers sewers on both sides of Northampton Street. And that monies will fund the base mapping, the survey, the utility mapping, the field reconnaissance, TV inspections of all the lines, smoke testing, investigation of all of the individual sewer services that are located along that sewer line. And we'll begin the design effort, but we'll by no means complete the design effort. So we're trying to bite off a little bit every year with the money that we can get through the Connecticut River Cleanup Committee to keep things moving, but not necessarily commit to spending the big dollars, particularly city dollars, anytime in the near future to get to the next project. The other piece of it we've identified $275,000 would be to allocate to the ongoing construction of the Jackson Street area sewer separation project. our project is under budget at this point, but we're running with a relatively small contingency after we receive the bids. We're running about 1% contingency, and that's awfully tight. So we wanted to put some additional funding that would help to build up the contingency, and that would be spent first because it's free money. So if we spend this money, it's money that we could avoid having to spend on the loan and having to repay, but also to give us a little bit of a cushion to deal with any uncertainties that might come up during construction. So that's it. The two pieces, they add up to the 760. Again, CSO number 21, River Terrace, getting that started, and Jackson Street helping to fund a portion of the construction.
Thank you, Bob. Very thorough as always, and very much concise on top of what we need to hear. Are there any questions for our city engineer?
Yeah, Joe, if I could.
Councilor Leahy.
Yeah, thank you. So, how long is this project? How long has the city been involved with this unfunded mandate?
I'm certain Joe knows the answer to that question better than you. A lot of years, probably 20.
A lot of years
under the current regulatory structure, but longer than that under prior regulatory requirements.
All right. So, and first of all, thank you for coming in here tonight, or staying where you are, and I hope you're doing well. And thank you for all the information. You actually provide very detailed information, and I thoroughly appreciate that. So after we do this, you made a comment saying that we have a lot more projects to do. Is that under that mandate?
The city continues to have over a dozen combined sewer overflows.
So after the dozen are done, will the city be done with what we had to do from the federal government?
What the city is required is to develop a plan for what they would do, what we would do over the next 20 years. What we are recommending be done, we work on separating the sewers in the Springdale area into the River Terrace area. If we're able to do that in the next 20 years, we will have satisfied that 20-year requirement, but we still will not have met all the long-term requirements.
Oh, really? Okay. Okay. Thank you, Joe.
When we finished the original CSO project, the big one was the Berkshire Street project, which combined a lot of into the separation unit and overflow unit, a lot of the problems. But when we did that, it was multi-million dollars. It was only 40% of our problem. And since then, Bob has been keeping us up to date. Jackson Street now is probably our next biggest one that we've had going in a while. And it's going to be followed by River Terrace and Springdale. I think we're going to start seeing the light at the end of the tunnel. But Councilor Leahy makes a good point. This is one long tunnel and a very expensive one. And it's nice to see money coming in from the federal government through the state, because
Yes.
in some communities, they've been 100% funded. Is there any other discussion on the grant?
I make a motion to approve it.
Councilor Murphy first.
Yeah, and Bob, thank you again for all you do, and glad you're doing better. So the Jackson Street project, which is obviously getting full throttle right now, just in terms of being able to tell the people in South Holyoke and the businesses, are we talking all summer right through to November, or in terms of completion, or are we talking springtime?
We are talking all summer, possibly some work during the wintertime, although much of the work that we might have been doing in the wintertime we're doing now. We're doing work in the alleys, which is one of the locations that might have been, wintertime work, because you don't work asphalt plants being open, right, and things. A lot of that will be done. But it will continue through springtime into next summer. So
through next summer.
Yeah. So and that combined with the South Holyoke improvements that are being done in the Carlos Vega and Valley Arena locations or area, will go on for 2 years. It'll be a big impact, but when it's all done, we in the neighborhood will be better off.
So if I were to tell them sometime next summer, we're probably got our streets and roads and sewers and water in pretty good shape. Yes, no, some of them.
We'll start to be putting some of them in better shape by then, but it will likely be fall. And then on the Holyoke project that'll extend a little bit longer, those areas won't be to the following spring. We'll have patch in place, but we won't have the overlay done and allow the trenches to overwinter.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
And for the rest of the committee members' benefit, I will be developing like I've done with City Hall staff, where I've tried to send an email out to all city employees to keep them apprised of the Dwight Front and Heritage Street project. I've been working with the Office of Planning and Economic Development to put together a target list of community organizations, businesses, etc., that are impacted by the work in South Holyoke. And my goal is to keep everybody apprised of the major impacts on a weekly basis.
That's much appreciated. Thank you.
Yeah. Every construction project is subject to change, so there'll be changes, but at least the big things that people really need to know, I'm going to try to get ahead of the curve on.
Thank you, Bob. If there's no further discussion, Councilor Leahy has made the motion that we recommend adoption and acceptance of this grant to the full city council. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion made and seconded with no further discussion. All those in favor? Any opposed?
Aye.
So moved. I have 4-0. 4-0.
Make a motion to take aye.
One. If I could ask you to take up item number 3, because Bob is here for that too.
Yep. Make a motion to take up item number 3 off the table.
Motion made second to suspend the rules to go to item number 3 and take it off the table. Is there any discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed? So moved. Item number 3 is introduced under the chair's name, also under Mass General Laws, Chapter 4453A. City Council hereby accepts the provisions of the fiscal 2020 Masstrails Connecticut River Pathway Project Grant and authorizes establishment of a fund and/or the method appropriate for the accounting of receipts and all expenditures of the said grant. Bob and Marcus is here to take us through this one. Gentlemen, if you could just lead us into how much the grant is, are there matching funds, and all the details.
Sure. I'll start out, and Bob, please free to jump in on the technical side. This is a $40,000 grant Masstrails program with the governor's office.
Marcus.
Yes.
Can I interrupt you for a second?
Of course.
Maybe it's just me, but is anybody else having a problem with the with the audio?
Yep.
Yeah, I can't hear Marcos that well.
Can you turn it up just a bit, or?
Let me.
That's a lot better like that.
Yep. Okay. The Wi-Fi
worse like that.
great today, so I've having problems all day. If I am having more problems, please interrupt me, and I'll log off and log back on. Sometimes that.
You seem fine. You seem fine now, Marcos.
Okay. Thank you.
So the Masstrails grant is ascribed to the governor's office. It's a $40,000 grant. It has a $10,000 match requirement, so a quarter of that. So as I say, we're getting $40,000 in on top of that $10,000, which we would be providing through already appropriated funds. We're not requesting any appropriation. So it would be a $50,000 total project, and the project is to do preliminary design and concept to expand the Connecticut Walk and Bikeway, specifically from the West Springfield boundary of Route 5 into Holyoke, all the way to the Springdale Park. So what we're looking to do is a combined pathway. These pathways are for both bicyclists and pedestrians on one side of the street. So the used for an engineering firm to do surveying of the entire corridor, looking at what type of permitting regime follow, and doing concept designs so that in combination with the engineer's office and planning and economic development, engaging residents along the corridor and important stakeholders of the corridor to see what particular design would be best suited to the city's bike and walking. So it's really a preliminary design. We will not have a deliverable where we will be able to go to bid and start constructing, but this is the initial detailed enough that will really allow us to go to the next step, which would be getting funding for full design. I think that covers most of it, Bob. Anything or anything you want?
Certainly.
Yeah, Joe, Bob, before you start, Joe, I think that a lot of the feedback isn't coming from Arcos. I think it's coming from other users that are not muted. So maybe if we could ask everybody to mute, it'd be better so we could hear the speakers.
Seems like we've gotten quieter, which is a good thing. So the background on this was, it was actually a recommendation that I've made and Marcos and I had talked about when the grant opportunity came forward. Many people probably aren't aware, even though it's been put out on public notice, because it's difficult for people to sort of be aware of when these types of projects are being proposed. But Mass DOT has completed the 25% design of a shared use path, a pathway basically that's designed for pedestrians, bicyclists, non-motorized transportation, that would begin effectively at the I-91 overpass in West Springfield on Riverdale by Daggett Drive, just north of Daggett Drive and Home Depot, and extend all the way up to Ingleside and Main Street in Holyoke. And what they are proposing to do is, and this may sound a little unique, is reduce a lane of travel on Route 5 as you're coming up Route 5 through West Springfield and into Holyoke, and use that land effectively to provide space to build this 10+ foot wide shared use pathway that would be a mode of transportation for people that aren't motorized to get from West Springfield up to Ingleside in Holyoke. When I became aware of that, I said, if and when that happens, and it's in real design right now, it's at a stage multiple steps ahead of where we would be. If that moves to construction at some point, it would be, in my mind, a great feature for Holyoke to be able to connect to. It would basically give connectivity all the way from the Springdale Park area, again, for non-motorized transportation, all the way down into Route 5 and the Riverdale area. So the thought was, when the state offered this grant opportunity, let's take a look at it. Let's take a look at whether or not we could benefit from that pathway that Mass DOT may be building, and whether or not it would make any sense to extend it further into Holyoke along Main Street. And that's really what I hope to get out of this. Is it real? What sort of impacts might it have? Positive, negative impacts, and what types of costs might be associated with that?
You're muted, Joe.
Joe, you're on mute.
Sorry, I was listening to the TV and I muted myself to make sure we could hear everybody. The TV could hear everybody. Marcus, just real quick. Bob and Marcus, thank you. $40,000 grant, $10,000 grant, $50,000 project. You both gave a great explanation of combining this with Mass DOT into West Springfield, and I think we got that much. Marcus, I didn't hear the part about the 10,000. I heard you say it was appropriated, but exactly what is that 10,000?
You'll probably remember from, or maybe not. It's not that significant, but in my budget, in the OPED budget, there's a line item, contracted services, which when asked what we use it for, we try to leverage other grants. So this is precisely the thing where we would use that for. So that's where I expect the match to come from.
Okay.
Contracted services line item in my budget.
Is there any discussion, Councilor Murphy?
Yeah, I certainly appreciate the thought of going for the grant, but I just want to, obviously this is in my ward, it's in my neighborhood, and I just want to go through a number of things that I think would be of concern. Number one, from Jones Ferry Road all the way down to Springdale Park, with the exception of the Dean School, almost every homeowner on the riverside that is on the street does not have enough parking in their driveways. I just went out just in my area and there was like 15 cars parked on this side of the street. So that would be a serious concern. And I know if you go to the curve, or you go past Dean School, past where the car wash is, you're going to have another half a dozen cars down there. And then when you get into the apartment area in Springdale and the homes there, you're going to have another half a dozen or a dozen cars. And and I think we were talking about going all the way to Jedediah's Landing. So if you went on the east side of Springdale Park with parking, you would be potentially having to eliminate a significant number of parking spots, which I think would make it extremely difficult for almost every one of those homeowners that's on the street side. There are some that are parked back closer to the river. They would be okay because they have longer driveways, but all the other ones would be a concern. I have obviously serious concerns about, and we talked about this, and I'm still going to be pursuing the idea of getting raised sidewalks, both at Dean and at Ingleside Playground. But the speed that people travel on this road now, and if we eliminated that parking on that side, first of all, if we limited that parking, I think I would have a revolution going on. But and that is obviously a concern. But I also think this the speed. We have to figure, before we do this, we have to figure out some way of disciplining by action. And I know, Bob, we talked about it in South Holyoke with the raised sidewalks, and I just think we have to find ways to physically stop people, because and I've seen, and I will say I've seen the police cruisers down at Dean doing traffic control and actually pulling people over. Half hour later, people are back to 55, 60, and in some cases well beyond that, and passing. So we got major issues on that road in terms of traffic. And again, it's the walkway for that side is about probably 4 to 5 feet. The driveway just barely fits with the cars. They probably have a foot or two of space other than being in the road. So those are all concerns that I have. And I certainly, if I ever were to support this, I would certainly want to go to all those residents and see what their view is on it, because obviously it's right next to where they're living. It's what they're expecting. It's what they are used to having. So those are all concerns I've had. And I know, Bob, you and I have talked about the curve down by where the Tasty Freeze used to be, and that curve, and trying to figure out a way to slow things down there. The crosswalk by Springdale Avenue and down in Main Street is another concern. So there's a lot of issues. If we could find a way to do all that, keep the parking and still provide a safe speed at which people travel and allow people those opportunities. And I'm assuming that's what this design is going to try to do. But I would be very, I would encourage us to make sure we don't go ahead and do something and find out that everybody on this side of the street in Ingleside and Springdale is going to say, whoa, now where do you want me to park my car? If there's already parking issues as it is. So those are all concerns. My first one is convenience. My second one is safety, and actually safety probably is number one.
Bob, Marcus, is this bike path going up Ingleside or down Main Street?
This would be going down Main Street.
So can we answer Councilor Murphy's questions?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So this grant is precisely to try to answer those questions. We don't have answers for it, and we wouldn't have a final design from this money. I mean, a real design for this would cost even more. This would be basis for design and engagement. The concerns that Councilor Murphy has, exactly what we would expect as city officials. And so, the first thing, just surveying this, gathering information, of course, engaging the residents. That's exactly what we want to do. And when you're designing concepts for a significant redesign of that's when you start considering other things like how can we best reduce speeds. And so, absolutely, that what we'll be doing in this would be addressing those concerns.
If I could ask a question to either one of you, Councilor Murphy raises a great point, and I forget, because a lot of times when we see bike paths, they come with a complete road reconstruction or project that we've accepted. does the bike path have to be created by an ordinance? I'm not sure myself.
I believe that to the city solicitor to say if it has to or not. I can comment that there are bike lanes established by ordinance in the city ordinance schedules now. So it has been done in the past.
Okay. So in order for the bike lane to be enforced, an ordinance would have to be created. So Councilor Murphy, I think you have some great questions, but it sounds like we're not at final stage, and that before they could actually build it, we'd have to create an ordinance.
Yeah, if I can.
Councilor Murphy.
Yeah, and I mean, again, I just, two questions. Is there a specific time limit on the grant?
The work would be done in this fiscal year. We completed by June.
Again, I can't, every time Marcos talks, I can't quite hear you.
The work is intended to be done this fiscal year. So by June of next year, we would be complete.
So because I'm looking, you know, I would think I would like to walk the neighborhoods right down on the street and just I would love to know, I want to get people's opinion, because I hate to do this and then find out that I've got, you know, we're doing this and here's the recommendation, and every person with their car parked out there and with their driveway right on the main street is, if they're opposed to it, you know, that would be, we would be spending money to not do something.
Well, in order to do that effectively, we would have to expend money from this grant, right? So if I lived on that corridor, I would want to know, my first question would be, well, what does it look like? Where is it? And so I wouldn't have options for that person unless I actually paid an engineer to survey the roadway and see it and say it could look like this, it could look like B, option C. And so that's why we have to spend money on the planning effort. That doesn't mean that there's going to be one specific design that's going to be done. Even if it didn't require an ordinance, we have no capital dollars for its construction, and we don't have any dollars for its full design. This is conceptual design, initial design, so that we can engage with stakeholders, including the residents there. And of course, as always, we welcome participation of the ward council because you have those relationships. And so with all that information, then we can say, you know, these options may be technically feasible, but unviable.
I think Marcos,
I don't know who that was.
That was Jim Leahy, I think.
I was just saying that I think I was having a hard time hearing Marcos. Can everybody else hear him?
No, I have a hard time hearing him too. It's like somebody's breaking you up, Marcos, for whatever reason.
It must be the Wi-Fi in there.
Sure.
I'm very sorry.
I can just pick it up for a second and
Okay.
say that the opportunity presented itself. This grant opportunity was there. We became aware of Mass DOT's plans. It seemed like the right thing to do at that point to take a look at it and see, does this make any sense? The project could stop at the end of this grant, and we may determine based on input from residents, from counselors, et cetera, that it really isn't a good fit for Holyoke, but there was an opportunity to take a look at it, and it was our desire to take a look at it.
Could I ask you a question about the 10-foot, Bob?
Excuse me.
Could I ask you a question about the 10-foot? I think you mentioned a 10-foot buffer with walkway and bike lane, right?
Correct.
Is that part of this requirement for this grant?
It's a trail. That's what the grant is desired for. So it's focused on paths like this, not sidewalks, paths that multiple modes of transportation can use.
Okay. And does the bike lane have to be just 3 feet?
It actually would typically be wider than 3 feet because there's a lot of things that go into how do you define that cross section of what this multi-use path would look like. But typically a bike path that's used by different types of users is 10 feet or wider in some cases. So it can be safe for multiple uses.
Okay. And again, I'm not a designer. I'm just going by, I went out and measured with my feet. But you know, I did, and I read the proposal that Cynthia sent out, and again, I just have, it may work, and I'll probably go along with the grant, but I'm going to go ahead and talk to some neighbors because I do think if if they're pretty unanimous one way or the other, and I can't tell them the design, but I can pretty much tell them if there's a bike path that has to be in that road, then there's no way they're going to be able to park on that road. And that would create, you know, I mean, I would think that would create a significant traffic issue in terms of parking. Where are they going and how are they getting there? And concerns about, I bought a house with the idea that I could park here and now I can't park here. So those are all concerns I have, but I appreciate the idea of trying to do things and trying to make it more livable. But I will talk to people and try to get a little more input. Like I said, I just wanted to make sure I understood this before I started going around talking to people. So, all right, thank you very much, Bob and Marcos. Thank you.
Is there any further discussion?
Yeah, Joe, can I just ask a quick question?
Councilor Leahy and Councilor Bartley.
Thank you. I might have missed it, but is the purpose of the actual bike lane, is it for traffic calming or is it actually for people utilizing bicycles?
I would say for it to be successful, very successful, it would have to do both. And that's why you need to take a look at the big picture first. I'd like to think that this project, if it ever went to design and construction, and it may never get there, but if it got there, would actually achieve all of the things that we're looking to do on Main Street and be part of an overall traffic calming strategy, in addition to creating a pathway. I don't think we'd ever want.
Right. Okay. Yeah, no, and I think that's a great thing because as you started saying in the beginning, or maybe Marcos, one of the two, it's just the amount of traffic that we have down there, the high speed. I mean, we're dealing with some constituents that are having an awful time up in the Ingleside area as well. So if we can put a contraption like a bike lane to slow vehicles down, maybe these homeowners will have a better quality of life. And you know, I'd hate to take away any parking spots, but if they're having less traffic or not less traffic, but slower traffic in their neighborhoods, maybe that's a good compromise. Maybe that's something that will increase their quality of life.
Councilor Bartley.
Yeah, Bob, thank you, Marcos, thank you. So is there any alternative to Route 5 to your mind?
I'm not certain if I understand your question. Alternative in which way?
Okay, so the only alternative, the only suggestion you put forth before us is having the bike path come up Route 5. Is that a true statement?
That would be the focus of this project. It does not mean that that's the only way to get.
Right. So that was my question, Bob. So I maybe I didn't say it artfully enough. So in West Side, it looks like the bike path goes along the Connecticut River. And what you're saying here is that the bike path would divert and actually go on Route 5 itself. Is that the suggestion that you're putting before us?
Not quite. What this again, it would, if it happened, would be building upon what Mass DOT actually has under design right now. They have, through a narrowing of Route 5, a narrowing of Riverdale Street, they will be they're proposing to drop a lane. They've completed the 25% design and create a pathway on the river side of Route 5, all the way from the I-91 overpass up to Ingleside and Main Street. That is already planned. Those plans exist right now. Again, it isn't final design, but it's at the intermediate design step. We would look to continue, if it made sense, the same concept that they are ahead of us on in terms of extending the pathway further up into Holyoke.
Just clarify what Mass DOT means by dropping a lane. Do you mean reducing from 2 lanes to 1 lane?
Yes.
Okay, this is not. This is a 25% design by Mass DOT to take from I-91 by Daggett Drive, heading north on the Connecticut River side, taking it from 2 lanes to 1 lane. Is that really on a plan somewhere, Bob?
You're correct. Yes.
Wow.
Wow. Okay. Councilor Murphy, through the chair. There you go. So, okay. Thank you.
And if I can,
Councilor Sullivan.
Once again, Councilor Bartley beat me to the question, so I'm all set. Let me take my hand down.
Councilor Murphy.
yeah, and I would love to think that if we did a bike lane, it would slow traffic. But if we did a bike lane and removed the parking, there is no doubt in my mind that people will go faster, not slower. Because right now, even with a narrow lane from the parking to the middle of the road, they're flying. If we did a bike lane and had to reduce the parking, my gut is they would have an extra 5 feet to be speeding on this side, and they would definitely use it. So, you know, if there was some way to make that happen, I would love to hear it. Thank you.
Any further discussion? Councilor Sullivan.
Yeah. So, Bob, if I understand this correctly, though, this is the whole reason behind this grant is this is just for study and planning, which would, I assume, include talking to the abutters, the neighbors, the people affected along the way. Would that be part of the grant program?
We would most likely schedule some type of a public meeting to invite people in to get their input. And certainly we've talked about parking being one of the big concerns now. So the only way that it would be successful is if we could find a way to accommodate all of these goals. Retain parking.
Yeah, so accepting the grant doesn't commit us to the project. The outcome of this grant could be that's a ridiculous plan, that we want no part of it, and it makes no sense at all. Am I correct in that?
Absolutely, yes.
And there's no cost to the city. There's no match.
10,000.
10,000, but Marcus has it in the budget.
It doesn't sound to me something like even wasting $10,000 on, but.
Any
Marcos?
further discussion? Councilor
Yeah,
Leahy.
Joe, if I could. Yeah, so Councilor Bartley, he kind of put it in perspective for me because I'm just thinking about the times you're over, you know, Daggett Road and you're coming back to Holyoke, you know, especially around the holiday season. I mean, you're backed up for, I can't imagine how this will improve traffic flow. Is there any indication, did Mass DOT say anything about how this can improve the traffic flow?
I haven't had any detailed discussions with them. I would invite you, the project I believe is still out to public comment right now. And I believe the link was posted on the city's website a couple of weeks ago. So any issues you have, I'd encourage you to bring them to the attention of Mass DOT. They do listen. You know, they if they get a very strong pushback, I suspect the project will be modified or maybe not move forward.
Can I ask one more question, Joe?
You can ask all the questions you want, Councilor Murphy.
Well, don't give Jimmy won't like that if you give me all that leeway, right, Jimmy? So, just a question regarding. So, if in fact we did this and we eliminated the parking on the east side, and then we come in and we have a snowstorm, and there's a bike path there, but it gets cleared. I'm assuming we couldn't have reverse plowing and have people covering the bike path. I mean, I'm not sure what the ordinance would be on that, but that would be another concern regarding that. If in fact there is no parking on the east side, I know we couldn't get all the cars on the west side, and then again, if we had reverse plowing, where do they go? So those are other issues. Thank you.
Just a couple quick questions. I'm not sure what the motion is going to be here, Marcus, Bob, but our next city council meeting isn't for 3 weeks. So what's the timetable again for this?
The timetable for grant expenditure in June. Can you hear me better now?
Yeah, you're in and out. Now keep your face closer to that mic.
I'm very sorry that you have to see more of my face. The timetable of expenditure is June 2021.
Okay.
But we don't have to accept the grant right away, right? If we were to take a little longer and do more research on it, or no? Or do we have to do it by September 15th?
I mean, what I would say is, hey, you don't have to accept the grant at all.
No, I know.
If it take longer to accept it, then we have less time to do the work.
Okay.
And so doing the work involves doing the community outreach, you know, getting information from stakeholders, hearing an engineer and all that.
Okay.
Nope.
Any other discussion? Councilor Bartley.
Yeah, I just want to recommend to chair, because otherwise I'll make a motion to deny it. I'd like to see it. I'd like to see us table this for now, and then maybe I can take a look. Maybe Mr. Parent, and I do compliment you on thinking outside the box, Bob and Marcos, of course, for at least pursuing this grant, because you're to be commended for that. And it's not to me, it's not the $10,000 right now. That's not it. It's just the idea as proposed, you know, dropping a lane. I find that almost just impossible to think that there's any scenario in which we're going to get anywhere. But I would like to at least look at the link. If Mr. Parent could send that along, so I can maybe read through what Mass DOT has to say prior to our next finance meeting. Joe,
and he will,
I don't want to make the motion to
Second.
table unless the chair feels that that's, if the chair is urgent, well, once, you know, I respect the chair, obviously, but I'd rather just kind of leave it here for now. So I'd want to get the chair's opinion on this. And then I'd like to get Mr. Parent to consider sending me that link directly to my email, and we could maybe take a look at what Mass DOT is proposing. And
Fair enough. Just, you know, I think the questions, concerns have been raised are legit and need to be addressed. I'm hearing Marcus say that part of them can be addressed by using the grant. I'm kind of concerned about the $10,000 because it's not, I don't consider any money free, because I think it's all taxpayers' dollars, whether it comes from the state or comes from the federal government.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's money that we don't have in our budget. The $10,000 we do. But I'm also worried that we're not meeting until the end of September. And as months start to get colder, some of this work, you know, some of this constituent work that Councilor Murphy said he would do, you know, really needs to be done before we lose the weather. So I can go either way, but I agree that, you know, this could be a deal breaker if we can't address the parking, we can't address the concerns of the neighborhood. I'm not against bike paths, but I think they have to be considerate to existing neighborhoods.
yeah, I'm not saying that the 10,000 is, you know, chump change. I'm not. I mean, but my main point is the lane drop as opposed to the 10,000. That's the only point I was trying to make. But I'll make a motion on the table.
Marcus, real quick.
Oh,
Second.
Right.
Second.
What I was going to say, the lane drop happens is in West Point, and that's not meant to minimize the concerns by the counselors. It's focused on the funding that we would use and what we would learn by doing the survey and conceptual work could serve us in many aspects, even if we don't go forward with a very specific shared use path. And as Councilor Sullivan was saying, we could reject as a certain scenarios, but it allows us to consider other concepts that we can go for funding. So, you know, I hear you that there's a bunch of scenarios that we wouldn't want. And if it was that easy, we wouldn't even grant to begin with. So I think approving the grant will really give us the tools to separate the chaff here, be able to answer the questions as I think everyone wants.
Marcus, you said the lane drop is in West Springfield.
Yes.
So it's going to drop a lane in West Springfield on Route 5. That's going to become 2 lanes again by Providence Hospital.
The improvement project that Mass DOT is designing is on Route 5 in West Springfield. So this grant has nothing to do with us dropping anything. The acceptance or not of the.
No, I understand, but Route 5 is a state highway. It's 2 lanes all the ways from Agawam, right? So if they drop in West Springfield, which is by Dunkin' Donuts, so the line is just after Dunkin' Donuts, they're going to go from 1 lane back to 2, go into 1 lane, then come back to 2 lanes. If we don't agree to do this?
No, this what we're discussing today will have no bearing on their design. And I'll echo what Bob said, we can share that design there. The fact that they're doing something on Route 5 is what opened the possibility for us to go for some funding to study our own corridor under the reasoning that, well, if you're going to be doing certain upgrades there, including a shared use path or something to that effect, then we're going to study our shared use path. It's not, I'll also say this, it doesn't prohibit us from doing other interventions somewhere else, for example, on Route 5 in Holyoke. Councilor Bartley, I don't know if that's where you were going with your question originally, but we could decide to look at other stuff later on with bike paths. This grant is particularly for trails that has to be so we can study the matter, and by studying this matter, we'll get information for multiple ways in which we can design it. If that makes sense.
All right. Can I get a copy of that link too? Because I'm not seeing this division.
Send it to all of us.
Sure.
Any further discussion? I hear a motion to table that's been seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? This will be laid on the table. Thank you, Bob. I think that's it. Marcus, next one is item number 2. I think it's you and Mr. Murphy. Motion to take off the table.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? This is under the chair's name. Item number 2, that with Mass General Laws, Chapter 44, Section 53A, the City Council hereby accepts the provisions of the Canal Systems Industrial Area Grant, authorizes establishment of a fund and other method appropriate for the accounting of receipts and expenditures and all resources of said grant. It's on the table for discussion. Marcus and Ben, can you take us through this? How much the grant is for, any match, and all the details, of course.
Sure.
Welcome, Ben.
I'll start off, Ben, and please color in anything that I would have left off, or if no one can hear me because of the terrible Wi-Fi. So the grant is for $12,500. It requires a dollar for dollar match. So we're matching $12,500 with community development block grant funding. This is a sequel to a grant that the council saw last year and work that we're just about complete. It's a Mass Historical Commission grant. And the reason why I'm calling it a sequel is you may remember from a couple of years ago, we did the first update to the Holyoke Historical Preservation Plan. The plan was originally from 1991, and that plan had mostly left out half of the center city, primarily South Holyoke and the Flats. And so in the Historical Preservation Plan update, I think it's dated 2016, 2017, something like that. It calls for doing an inventory of key properties, particularly in South Holyoke and the Flats, because there's no inventory of those properties. The importance of doing these inventories is as we consider site readiness and getting properties more advanced and in the queue to development. You know, there are incentive programs at the federal and state level for historic tax credits. Locally, CPA for historic preservation. So if someone's going to invest a significant amount of dollars that requires equity into a property, having these types of inventory documents will be very helpful, because that's what you would need to submit for your tax credits or CPA documentation. So in the first iteration of this, I think the grant was for $10,000, and we matched that with CDBG. About this time last year, we were having that conversation. In the packet that Ben sent you a couple of days ago, you would have seen some examples of what those forms are. Those forms have changed over time, and they have much higher requirements now on documentation and history. And so that initial grant was basically hugging Main Street. And the properties on Main Street, it kind of went south on Cabot as well, because we had enough money to do a little bit more property, so we expanded that on Cabot. And so this grant will cover all the other properties in South Holyoke and the Flats up to the first level canal that wasn't covered in the first grant. So we would have documentation on all those properties, historically significant properties, from the first level canal off to the river. Ben, anything I didn't capture from that?
Thank you, Marcus. I heard you much better, or because you're so close, I might be reading your lips. I'm not sure.
I'm also standing right underneath the Wi-Fi. So.
Ben, you want to take over?
Sure. I don't have too much to add. I'll say what's helpful is to look at the map that I sent in the packet. I think it was on page 12. It kind of shows the area we're talking about, and it's kind of a donut. There, the middle is missing, and that's essentially what we're just finishing up with the Main Street corridor survey now, and that's where those 3 examples that were included in the packet come from. So it's pretty excited to get it done, and like Marcos said, this is an important first step to other funding sources, especially historic tax credits, which historic tax credits require a property to be eligible or listed on the National Register of Historic Places, and to be listed on the National Register of Historic Places, this is the first step. You need a good updated survey. So it's a step in that direction.
Thank you. Let me ask a quick question, and I ask this a lot. With the, if property is designated in the Mass Historic Commission, right, inventory?
Yes.
Will there be any restrictions put on deeds?
No, there's no restrictions on deeds, no.
So please talk to the CPA committee, will you? Any discussion? Sorry, Councilor Sullivan.
Well, I can answer that a little bit for you if you want.
We'll do that at another meeting. We got enough to do tonight.
All right.
Sorry, my fault.
Fine.
On the motion.
Is there any further questions or discussion?
Yep.
Councilor Sullivan.
Yeah. So my biggest concern, Marcos, is the use of 12,500 additional money out of CDBG when it was already so tight this year. We had so many programs cut that we're now prepared to take 12,500 out of CDBG for this, which is just a study. How all of a sudden have we got the money in CDBG to do this, when just a few weeks ago we were asking people to back off on programs, et cetera, you know?
Well, I can't speak in detail to everything CDBG related because I don't administer the funds. My understanding was that these are not the allocated funds for this fiscal year. Maybe it was last year at some point the Office of Community Development had set a little bit of money aside to register kind of like as a follow-up to the first phase, right? To nominate properties to the register, and so we're taking it from those. We didn't submit. Ben, correct me if I'm wrong. I don't think this was an award from this round. This is just a reallocation of previous.
It's a split. Some of it is, but I think most of it is from previous allocations, and I think it was from 2 or 3 years ago. There was funds allocated for National Register nominations, really, and nothing had happened with that. And really, the argument is that this is the first step to listing properties on National Register. So this is really the way to go with that.
And thanks for the reminder, because that the small award would have been in months ago, which seems like years ago.
Yeah, I was on CDBG for 4 years, and I don't remember any funds being set aside for putting stuff on the National Register.
Again, I can't speak to all the details in the for the CDBG because frankly I don't even understand the process.
Okay. I am somewhat concerned about having, with everything else going on now, having to take matching funds out of CDBG for this at this time. It seems strange that there are funds available like that all of a sudden. So.
Is there any further discussion? Councilor Bartley.
I I just want to answer through the chair to Mike's question. There has been $0 set aside since I chaired that committee, and I chaired that committee since 2014. The committee that oversees, I'm using air quotes here, oversees community development block grant funds, not 1 penny for national historic preservation or mass historic preservation for that matter. Not $1. So there's that. And I'm going to echo Councilor Sullivan's concerns for it. I think this is an admirable program. I don't think the funding source is a proper one. Consequently, I will not vote for it. Thank you.
Any further discussion? Chair will entertain a motion.
Motion to deny.
Second.
Motion made second to deny. Is there any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Yes.
Aye.
That's 3. All those opposed, say no. No. 3 to 1. 3 to 1 to 1. Okay, that'll go to the full city council with a recommendation on a 3 to 1 vote to deny at our next scheduled meeting. Marcus, I don't think you have anything to do with item number 4. Are you all set?
All set. Thank you.
Thank you. Bob, I think you're gone, but thank you if you didn't hear me. And Mr. Murphy, Ben, thank you very much. Item number 4. Chair will entertain a motion to take it up for discussion.
Moved.
This is our final grant of the evening under Mass General Laws, Chapter 44, Section 53A. The City Council hereby accepts the provisions of the IMLS CARES Act grant entitled Virtual Programming for Distance Learning, and authorizes the establishment of a fund and another method appropriate for the accounting of receipts and expenditures of all resources associated with the administration of said grant. So off the table for discussion. Is there someone here to present this grant? Brian, Mr. Bloomberg, or Mr. Soto from the schools are supposed to be here or not notified?
So I sent the link to Mike Sullivan, or I mean, Mike Sullivan, Mike Bloomberg, and I don't see him on here.
Okay, what is
Make a motion to table it.
Is this a schools grant, or is it, the way I saw it, was it more of a schools grant than this side of the budget?
So the grant is for it's about $3,500, and it's a virtual program for distance learning. The only signature on here is from the mayor, Alex Morse, so there isn't any department specifically listed here.
Okay, then the mayor's office was notified and not present?
Right.
All right,
Make a motion to
thank
table.
you. Motion to table. All those in favor? Any opposed? This will be laid on the table till we hear back from the requesters of said grant. All right. If the committee could bear with me, we're moving on to, and I think we can do a little grouping for discussion purposes. Maybe not for final votes, but a little grouping for just to be able to get a discussion going on a number of items that we have at least 2, possibly 3 presenters with us this evening. So I'd ask the committee to allow us to take up items 5, item 6, and item 7. Item 7 is more just for information and discussion purposes as far as this evening goes.
So moved.
Okay, on discussion, is that okay? Any discussion about taking the 3 items up? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So moved. I apologize on item number 5. It says annual finance report. I just want to explain that. The annual report is when we get the books are closed after sometime after the final independent audit is presented to the city. We're not quite at that point of the year yet. That is required. An annual report is required by, I believe, charter. But we have an order that we accepted as a council maybe a year and a half ago now, to have our auditor in more periodically to make presentations. And there's a couple areas that I think I've heard from many of you that we're all interested in. So tonight, Tanya is going to be here to make some general updates on where we are. We're 2 months into the fiscal year, so they're general. And one of the areas that, you know, I've been hearing a lot of discussion about, and I'd like to learn more about, along with Tanya, we have Katie Jakowski, who has been working on the COVID emergency funds and the oversight of monitoring them and keeping track of them, both for the mayor's office and for the audit, working with the auditor, I'm sorry. So that's the two areas. And then item number 7 was a communication, which kind of gets into a lot of this. So I put it on the agenda so we could have it for discussion. Is there any questions from the committee about what we're doing here? And to our presenters, if we could stay on maybe one topic at a time so that our questions can be focused on that one topic. For example, we can do the COVID stuff up front. Or Tanya, if you want to do a general overview first, and then we should do the item from Mr. or Councilor McGee about the grants and updating us how the end of this past fiscal year went as opposed to the year before. So what's the pleasure of Tanya and Katie? Want to do COVID first, or Tanya, would you like to go first? I see your name, Tanya. Tanya did, I'm going to try and get a hold of her. She did text me, and she was having some technical difficulties. All I got was, I think, where she is. She may be having problems like Marcus did. Katie, can you start with a COVID emergency fund? And I think you sent out some information earlier, but something just to update everybody. And if anybody needs more information, we can do that.
Sure. The information that I sent out all last week, I was communicating with Councilor Murphy. He was asking for some information on the emergency spending. And then obviously there was tonight, so I tried to send it out to Councilor Murphy and Councilor McGiverin. I'm happy to pass it along to anyone else that wants it, a copy. But it's just a breakdown of what we have spent as far as emergency spending funds through June 30th, and then from July 1st through today. And in reality—
Could you send me a copy?
I'm sorry,
this is Jim. Yeah, this is Jim. I would love a copy of that.
Sure. Absolutely.
I think it'd be good if you sent it to everybody, Katie. That's scary. I mean, that's just, I know it was useful information for me.
Ryan, can I just send it to you and you could distribute?
Okay, yeah, I'll make sure. I'll follow up on that. Make sure everybody gets a copy through Ryan or me. It's a spread chart though, so I think we have to copying it isn't printing it isn't as easy as we like to know us merry-go-round people. I understand that, Ms. Mikowski, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry for the interruption. I'll make sure everybody gets a copy.
No problem. And then I just sent out as well a copy of the bulletin from DLS, kind of giving the majority of the overview of guidance that both Tanya and I received as far as how we are accounting for these funds. DLS has suggested and requested that we set up 2 separate funds outside of the general fund, one for CARES Act reimbursement and the other for the FEMA reimbursements. FEMA tends to be 75% of an expenditure, and then the other 25% that typically a city would cover is going to be covered by the CARES Act funds. So all of the emergency expenses should be fully 100% reimbursed down the line as we submit for reimbursement. And I have been very careful as we've gone. Everybody is submitting to me if they think that they have a reimbursable expense, and I've submitted to the appropriate, whether it be MEMA or DLS, to make sure that each expenditure is actually covered by one or both of these funds, so that everything should be 100% covered and nothing will actually hit the general fund as an expense.
Before a department head or the mayor's office spends money from either of these reimbursements, do they have to be in the budget and appropriated and approved by the city council?
No.
Okay, and that's in that memo or I guess that report that you sent us from DLS. This is almost like block grant monies where they give the mayor the ability to spend this money without approval from the council, is the way I'm reading it.
Correct, because the both of the funds there's no like built-in budget for them. Obviously, with the CARES Act money, we have a certain amount that's allocated to the city of Holyoke, but that doesn't mean that we need to utilize all of those dollars, or that we will, just that that's a finite limit as far as those funds. But in essence, both of these funds are reimbursements, so we do the expenditure and then submit for reimbursement and get the money, so there's no money ahead of time. But like I said, it's both funds are strictly, kind of oversaw by myself and Tanya, as well as the purchasing department, to make sure that that every expenditure that goes through these funds is going to be covered and is reimbursable, eligible, and that we're not spending it on things that we shouldn't be.
Is there any discussion or any other questions?
Joe, my hand up.
Okay, I got them all, but sorry. Councilor Murphy?
I'll defer to the committee, and then after
All right, then it's Councilor Bartley, then Councilor Sullivan.
I don't have my hand up yet.
Councilor Sullivan.
Hey,
I'm trying to help Tanya out. I'm doing two things at once. I apologize. Councilor Sullivan.
Yep. Thanks. Kate, so when somebody's hired, that's an expenditure out of these emergency funds, right?
As long as it's a temporary employee that's specifically for the COVID emergency.
So I've seen some of the jobs posted. Has there been a screening process or a review? Let's say 2 or 3 people apply for a job. Is it going through the personnel department, or is it just the mayor selecting who he wants?
Going through the personnel department, and the majority of the positions are through the Board of Health. So the director of the Board of Health is highly involved in that as well, along with personnel.
Okay. And do we have a list of the people that were hired and the qualifications of all the applicants?
Personnel should be able to provide that. As of right now, I believe there's only 4 hires thus far.
Okay. And all 4 hires are at no cost to the city, to the general fund.
Correct.
And are they with any obligation to continue after the grant money runs out?
No. The posts are specifically labeled temporary, and it's as long as this money is available and the COVID emergency is still ongoing.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor Leahy.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, thank you, Katie. So who are the 4 people that got hired, and what are their salaries?
Off the top of my head, I couldn't tell you. I know there's a operations and logistics out of the Board of Health, and then they've hired 1 part-time, and I believe are looking to hire another part-time COVID inspector. And then there is 1 individual that was hired as to assist with the financial tracking and IT development resulting from the COVID emergency. So actually that might only be 3. I don't think we filled the second temporary part-time inspector yet.
And we don't, and those names and the salaries have been provided to you?
They are. I would have to look them up.
Okay.
I'm happy to. Yeah, I can send them out in an email, all that information.
Okay, thank you, Joe.
Thank you, Councilor Leahy. Next will be Councilor Murphy, then Councilor Bacon.
First of all, let me thank Kate, because she's taken on a responsibility, and I asked her, and I this is one of those cases, and I know she's being extremely honorable. And Kate, first of all, I want to publicly thank you for what you're doing. And I know she indicated she's not getting any extra reimbursement, and I personally think the system should be set up to at least provide her some additional pay for the additional hours she's putting in to do this. So that's number 1. There have been 3 people that have been hired. The first person that get hired was Rory Casey on July 14th as the Director of Operations and Logistics at a salary of $62,000. And it will be charged to CARES Act funding. The second person, and there was 3 people that got interviewed for that position. I mean, I've gotten all this from the personnel office. The second person that got hired, and this, I have much more concern about this position, although I have other issues on the other one. That would be for, next person got hired was for the position of Deputy Director of Emergency Finance. That person got hired on July 28th. His person's name is Matthew Dovell, D-O-V-E-L-L. My problem is twofold with that. We never advertised the position. And after having interviews, it was agreed that that person would be a good person to fit this other job description, even though we had a job description ready to go on, and I believe May 27th to June 3rd. This person got hired on July 28th, but we ended up not advertising. We ended up not giving anyone from Holyoke a chance to apply for that job. Not that that's necessarily a qualification, but I would have hoped that we would have given Hoyokers a chance. And the last person they got hired is Sandra Giraldo, and she got hired on an hourly basis, and her position is COVID-19 part-time compliance inspector, and she got hired on August 3rd. A couple of other concerns that I have, again, and you know, I just compared. I mean, these people that are coming in, you know, obviously, hopefully they're doing things that we need to have done, but I almost found it as an insult to our current staff that are working hard. And I went through the budget. You know, the Director of Operations and Logistics is getting paid just about the second highest paid position in the Board of Health right now. The only person slightly higher is the nurse, and she's $235 higher. The next position, the Deputy Director of Emergency Finance, is being paid $54,290. The Assistant City Auditor gets $54,900. The General Assessor $57,000. The Assistant Treasurer $51,000. The Senior Deputy Treasurer $49,900. The Senior Deputy Tax Collector $49,900. I mean, I don't know how the salaries ended up getting where they were, but to me, I found that it's somewhat disrespectful of the work that people are doing in a city year in and day out. And again, I have nothing against the person. I do think we should have advertised, and the idea that we had to do this in an emergency situation, and that this person fit all the other qualifications, to me, does not open up in an open, transparent process. But again, I asked Kate, I think last Thursday or Friday, Kate, I think, and she provided me information and a detailed, and you'll all get that report, but she provided a detailed report of what was spent before June 30th, what was spent after July 1st, all the explanations. I do want to also say that there are a few things, and I know the hope is that there will be no money coming out of the city, but the letter, the bulletin that came from the Department of Local Services, just a couple of things. In fiscal 21, we will, with appropriation in anticipation of reimbursement from the Secretary's grant under Mass General Law, and hope that, I mean, as I read it, I'm saying without appropriation, in anticipation. So there's no need for us to appropriate because we're all supposed to get refunded for that money. But then there's going down, and again, I think Kate's done a good job in terms of separating FEMA money from CARES Act money. But as I read I'm going to just read one paragraph for what she said. The expenditures in the FEMA fund are to be offset by FEMA as FEMA reimbursements are received. After the community receives final reimbursements from FEMA, any remaining expenditures in this account might possibly be covered by CARES Act reimbursements, depending on further guidance received from the federal government. So our hope is that we're going to. Based on that, and there may be further information, Kate, if you may have it, please correct me. But then, as I read that, if not, any deficit will need to be provided for in the ensuing fiscal year's tax rate recap. But as I understand it, it won't be calculated to reduce our free cash. And Kate, if you can correct me if I'm wrong on any of those points. Those are some concerns that I had, because it sounds like it's all reimbursable, but as long as the state follows through on one side and the feds follow through on the other, but we have no guarantee that I can see. Kate? So
the only adjustment I would make to that is that I think that would be true if we got to a point where 25% of the FEMA costs were going above and beyond our already allocated total for the CARES money. So as long as we're within and under that allocated total that we've already been told we're going to get, we should be okay.
What is the total for CARES Act?
Well, I forget. I want to say Hoyok's is like $1 million something.
Okay, so if we're under that, that would help pay for the FEMA.
Correct.
Okay, but if we exceed that, then the 25% FEMA that we would then have to cover in our budget.
Right. Theoretically, if the state didn't get any more additional CARES Act money to distribute.
Okay, and again, I want to publicly thank you for what you're doing, and I appreciate your work.
Thank you.
Councilor Bacon?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And thank you, Katie, for all the work that you've been doing on this. I just have a couple of comments, I guess, because others have asked the questions that I had earlier. I'm really concerned about these full-time salaries for people that may be otherwise involved with other local activities. And I would really encourage us, to the extent that we can, to encourage the mayor to have all of these people on an hourly basis, so that they are billing for the time that they are actually spending for the city under this money, and that we can document the reimbursement. I'm concerned with, in particular, the two salaries, the $62,000 one and the $54,000 one. I really think there needs to be accountability in the city for what the people are doing with their time. And I'm not sure under the temporary category how you are having to document this for the reimbursement, but I would think that hourly and hours spent on specific activities would be the tightest way of having accountability for this money that's flowing through to us. Is that a reasonable request on my part? Are you getting, or is anybody getting hours spent from any of these people?
Well, the job descriptions for those specific positions are built as such that only COVID work is what they should be doing. Obviously, you know, I understand your concerns and I don't necessarily disagree. But it's built into that job description that only the work that's reimbursable is what their actual job is. So that's kind of where that is. But yeah, basically, as far as the tracking goes, you know, we submit, you know, payrolls, paperwork and documentation.
Okay, so let me just ask my question in a little more pointed manner then. Is there any documentation coming in from the people? I worked from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. on this date doing this. Or is it just, I was there for 35 hours last week? And
there's definitely not any paperwork coming in with that specific. One of the full-time employees works specifically out of the purchasing department. So there's supervisors that oversee and make sure they're there for the hours that they're getting for. But the other one, I'm not sure what oversight the Board of Health Director is administering.
Well, because the position is the Director of Operations, right?
Right.
So it would seem that they'd have to be coordinating people somewhere. So do we have any way of knowing that the person is in an office in the city anywhere on any given day?
I don't personally, because it's under the Board of Health. It should be the director should be able to verify that, as that would fall under his responsibility as every other position under the department would.
So the director would be signing off on the timesheets or whatever's being submitted to account for the money?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Katie, and we do have Tanya with us now. I think Tanya's corrected her technical problem. She's been listening but unable to talk to us. Tanya, can you hear us?
Yes, can you hear me?
We can.
Yes.
We're doing the COVID part of what we talked about before tonight. I think we're getting a lot of questions answered and probably have a lot more questions to be answered. But with the positions that have been hired, I've asked this before, and it's a concern is because we've seen this with grant monies is when this money runs out in a year or maybe it's going to be 2 years, these positions will be laid off, obviously, because they don't fit into our budget. When they're laid off, are they eligible for unemployment, and who is responsible for the unemployment, knowing that the city is self-insured in that area?
I believe that it depends on how they're hiring. I do know for sure that 2 people are actually receiving benefits, so I could say that those people would be eligible for unemployment, but I'm not sure about the other 2 individuals.
Okay.
Like there's a director of, go ahead.
Our city solicitor's with us too. So Tanya, if you and Crystal work with Hector, maybe could we get some answers on that so we can plan for it?
Absolutely.
Is there anything else with COVID before we move on? Katie, you want to add something?
I'm going to add that I know that all of the temporary hires under these funds are not eligible to contribute to the city retirement because they're temporary.
Right.
So we might be okay as far as unemployment because of that. But again, definitely would want to talk to the solicitors and personnel and hammer that out.
Definitely.
Councilor Bacon?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to follow up, and I want to be sure through our personnel department that if they are temporary and they should not be afforded benefits, then they shouldn't be receiving benefits. Nothing should be done to change their category from temporary to permanent under this CARES Act, because otherwise a liability is being created for the city that we have no resources for. And I mean, I'm hearing through the memo that we may have some liability anyway, similar to the Quinn bill, if the state doesn't get around to funding the promise. We're going to be on the hook for these positions anyway. And I would go back, and I know the mayor can do what he wants, but these people should all be hourly, working hourly, getting paid for the hours. They're actually doing something for the city to keep our liability contained in the event that the state budget doesn't come through and we don't get the 25%, et cetera, you know?
Councilor Barley, then Councilor Leahy.
Yeah, they are getting benefits, aren't they, Kate?
If they're working more than 20 hours a week, they're eligible for like health insurance and other insurance. But the benefit allocation that would be the city's cost is allocated to the COVID funds.
So they can get like life insurance or dental insurance or health insurance?
Correct.
Okay, and that's reimbursed by the Commonwealth, or it's reimbursed by the CARES Act, I guess?
Correct.
Okay, and I guess basically there's the supervisor would be the one responsible. So I mean, it's only 3 employees, right? So this shouldn't be terribly complicated. So there's 1 employee who's in purchasing, and the other 2 are in Board of Health.
Correct.
Okay, so what do you suggest that we, you know, since you're kind of, what is it do you suggest that we get from the Board of Health to document the the work's being done. Do you have any suggestions for the department heads or at all? Any input for them?
It certainly could be as simple as they just submit weekly timesheets that their supervisor has to sign off on. I don't see why that would be unreasonable.
Yeah, have you had a chance to suggest that?
Yeah, not one in particular, but I certainly can.
Well, yeah, well, I guess we do appoint you, so I'd recommend that you do suggest that. And then why don't you give us some feedback as to whether or not that suggestion was accepted or rejected?
Sure.
And we'll take it from there. Thank you.
Councilor Leahy, is your hand still up?
Joe, thank you so much. All my questions have been answered.
And Councilor Sullivan,
I should say they've been answered, but I'm waiting for the emails.
Okay.
I wish I had those emails prior to this meeting.
Councilor Sullivan, are you all set?
Well, I think so. Just to recap, I thought we originally said that 4 people had been hired, and now I'm hearing 3. Which is the right?
So I posted for a second COVID inspector. I just forgot that hadn't been filled yet, but they are looking to fill it.
Okay, so Sandra Gerardo is working out of the Board of Health, the health director's office, right?
Correct.
Duville and Casey are both working out of purchasing.
Casey's out of Board of Health.
Board of Health. All right. And then Duville's out of purchasing.
Correct.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Okay, as far as COVID emergency relief funds go and questions, is there any further discussion?
I can just
It's been all encompassing. Councilor Murphy, just on COVID.
Yeah, so this is just, and that temporary deputy director of emergency finance, this is what was going to be posted had we done it. And it indicates that the person is working, but not working in partnership, but not limited to the offices of procurement and the tax collector, and to work alongside the finance departments on assignments and projects in the city of Holyoke's health issue, and partnering with the director of emergency finance and the IT director to evaluate and implement new technologies and process to improve city operations. Seems like that seems like a pretty significant full-time job that someone was getting advertised for, but there's both, obviously we don't have an emergency director of emergency finance to my knowledge.
Technically, I was assigned that title. There's just no pay with it.
So technically it's you.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So does he report to you?
Theoretically, I give him his assignments for as far as helping me with the tracking and
Yeah.
whatnot. But he's physically located in procurement and working right there. That's the first office that we're working on getting IT updates for COVID purposes.
Okay. And so the IT for COVID purposes, I know you're a good IT person because I've heard everybody tell me you give them training on Munis. So is that the kind of thing we're talking about?
Yeah. So like different things because a lot of city work, especially in the procurement office, is still all paper-based. So as we've started to try and deal with this working from home aspect and COVID response, we need to upgrade and get more paperless. So he's focusing on the IT functions within that office that can be upgraded to assist with better servicing the functions in that office technologically.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Okay, seeing no other hands up at the moment. Katie, you're going to stay with us for a couple minutes. You get one more item, right? And Tanya, yep. I know you've maybe not have heard the entire discussion, but is there anything about the COVID emergency fund you wanted to add to this?
No, thank you.
Okay. And how about we talked a little bit the other day about this is a preliminary discussion, not an annual report, obviously. But how about the general fund? Are we running deficits anywhere? And how
We are
is
not
it coming in?
And how is what? I didn't hear you.
How is the revenue coming in? How are tax
So the
collections? How's
Kate might want to speak more to the tax collection piece of that. If that's what you want to know about the revenues, like I can tell you the revenues are coming in from the state, just as they said they would based on the last year's fiscal year 20's revenues for the first 2 months. So we did get the first month already. So that was accurate as to what they said. But as far as tax collections, I would let Kate speak to that.
well, what I'm asking to anyone, I understand, our tax collector is, but she seems to be busy with the COVID. But we're 2 months into a fiscal year with agreed upon expenses that we want, but we're 2 months into a very different fiscal year, and is the revenue coming in to support the budget?
Yes, the revenue is coming in to support the budget, and we are not experiencing any deficits.
Any deficits in the unemployment account?
No, there is not.
And the school departments have no deficit?
Not in the general fund.
Where else could they have a deficit? Everything else is grants.
Well, they can have a deficit in their grants.
I hope not, because that's the trouble we got in last year. Is there
I
anything
understand
else on
that.
the general part of the budget? Is there any questions about the general budget anyone has at this point? Where is the outside audit, and when will we anticipate closing last year's books?
So fiscal year 19's audit has been complete. We do have the draft financial statement. I should be getting the management report and the finalized statement, I would say within the next week or two.
Fiscal 19 or fiscal 20?
Fiscal 19. Fiscal year 20 won't start until we actually close the books for fiscal year 20, which I'm working on. I have some tax titles that I'm working on, as well as some grant reconciliation before I push that through and I close out the fiscal year for fiscal year 20. That will also be in the next week or so.
Thank you. Any other general questions for Tanya before we go into the grant issue, which is the next item?
Just have one.
Councilor Bacon?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm just wondering about the separation between the COVID monies between the school and the city side. Is the school handling its own COVID money and we're handling ours separately?
No, it actually all goes through the city. So we handle theirs as well. Those are included on this spreadsheet that Kate has.
Oh, okay. I haven't seen it yet. Yeah.
It's a little of both. We do like general PPE stuff and things that can be reimbursed through our reimbursement process on the city side we are doing. And then there's certain CARES Act school expenses that are allowed that run through the city. But then the city also, or the school also has 2 separate CARES Act pots specifically for school that they're working with separately and dealing with those expenses on their own.
So do we know if the city will have any liability for the school side if the state budget money doesn't come through, or are they uniquely separated?
I believe that they're uniquely separated, and the school funds are going directly through DESI. So I can't really speak 100% on how those funds are working because it's just going through the school department.
And I'm only because the flow of this money almost seems too easy and too loose to be true to me. You know, like 60,000 here, 50,000 there, and you're just putting in like a payroll summary every week. I mean, it just seems almost too easy. That's all. Thank you.
Any further discussion? Okay, the chair would enter. I think at this point, we have some good updates and we appreciate it, ladies, and thank you for all your work. I think at this point that these orders would serve a better purpose to remain in committee. Motion to table,
Motion to table.
second.
All right, second.
All those in favor? Any opposed?
Aye.
These items will remain tabled, and obviously we'll come back to them in the future to get future updates. Next item.
Make a motion, take the next item off the table.
Is item number 8, that the city tax collector assessor come before the finance committee to discuss the excise tax with regards to companies like United Tractor Trailer, Amazon, Bay State Medical, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It's off the table for discussion. We have both our assessor and our tax collector with us to give us some updates on this. Many of us know it's been an age-old problem with certain companies, but we also know that it's, I think we've been some hard work very recently done in this area. Tony, Katie, you want to take the lead?
We checked out United Tractor Trailer. They have 6 tractor trailers that are registered within City of Holyoke for 2020. That total is $1,591 that goes to excise collection. As far as Amazon is partnered with a company called Gelco Company and Gelco Trust. I did some preliminary figures for 2020, and we had at least 146 excise bills for their vans. That was totaling $78,000 in excise that comes to the city. So, and that doesn't include the rest of the year so far. They were on the books for 19 and 18, and I can go as far back as 15 when trucks were registered in Holyoke. So they're paying their fair share for excise up there at the Amazon plant. Nothing, and they lease a fair amount of truck or vans, and they are all registered in Holyoke right now. So that's good news for us.
Bay State Medical?
Bay State Medical.
Austin.
Tony, you froze up.
Cars that are registered under would have exempt status for automobile.
That because they come under the hospital wing?
So their excise is exempt.
Do we get anything from
yes.
Bay State Medical? They took the wine building,
we
which
get
is one of our newer manufacturing buildings, completely off the tax rolls. They have probably 75 to 80 cars, you know, they're for their couriers. They're overnight.
Yeah, I know. I've done exemptions for them before when cars slip through. You know, we have to exempt them. It's unfortunate. It's a state law. It falls under the hospital umbrella.
This is a laboratory, though. It's not the hospital.
Yeah, but they are doing testing for lab and blood work for. And they have a school there also for mock rooms that they do for more streamlined process. So that's what they do.
Any further discussion?
There is just one question.
Councilor Murphy?
Just you're saying, Tony, there's only 6 trucks for United Tractor Trailer?
That's correct. I checked that over the course of the past week. Now they might have some more that come online and they might have. I think they have another office which is in Springfield. So
okay.
Probably most of their trucks are through the Springfield, you know, registered in Springfield.
Yeah, because I know when I had a little issue with them at the
yeah.
mall, and they did correct it, but I seemed like there was a lot more than 6 trucks there when I was there. So
yeah, I mean the 6 that are there are probably the ones that they're using the training for, and then they'll they'll drive some other ones when they have some other training, you know.
Okay.
So.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, Joe?
Councilor Leahy?
Yeah, hey, thank you. So this is better information than I thought, because for some reason or another, I thought that Amazon was not paying us any. I think it was actually stated at one of our meetings that they weren't paying any.
When we had a
excise tax.
special permit, and we went through a special permit in front of the ordinance committee. And
Right.
it was at that time, and I think it was just this information we were fed.
Okay, so that's good news. So Tony, how many cars are up there, or how many of those sprinters type of vans?
They have at least 140 that.
Okay, so we have 140 vans, and they're paying excise tax on those. Then they're also getting gas at local gas stations. They're probably stopping at local convenience stores and lunch places. So I think it's besides the amount of traffic that they cause, but I think it's they're bringing some decent money into the city.
Yeah, I know they have a corporate account with the Shell on the corner
Tierney's
of
old
Holyoke.
place.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Any further discussion? Chair will entertain a motion that the order has been complied with.
Motion.
Second.
Motion made second, the order has been complied with. Is there any discussion on that? All those in favor?
Aye.
Excuse me. Any opposed? So moved.
Make a motion to take the next item off the table.
Tony, thank you. Katie,
Thanks,
thank
Tony.
you. We
Yeah,
appreciate your help.
I was going to stick around for the
You're
pilot
welcome.
stuff.
You're
Yeah,
always
because-
welcome.
I had some stuff to add for the pilot that, you know, myself and Crystal Barnes have worked on. So it'll
The
take
only thing is
one-
it's not on
one-
the agenda this evening.
Oh, okay. All right.
Sorry.
I thought it was.
I don't even,
Okay. Okay.
Ryan?
No problem.
yeah, hang on, Tony, hang on a minute. Ryan, you know the order that our chief assessor is talking about?
Joe, I think it's number 10.
Yeah.
Councilor Bacon's order?
So
Yes.
Sullivan,
No, it was Sullivan. Mike Sullivan.
did you pull it? Do we have a draft?
I'm not seeing it on the agenda, and I put the agenda together.
Yeah,
All right.
number 10 says doesn't say Mike Sullivan. It says Linda Bacon.
Yeah, this was the one we had received in an email from Ryan. So maybe it
Did
was.
you get back to Ryan? Because he was fishing for information that we had not received for months now. And we were hoping to get the information before the meeting so we could.
You know what? Myself and Tanya and Crystal and myself worked very hard on all the pilot programs for all the solar. It's a 2-minute thing. So
Tony, I understand, but it violates the open meeting law. It's not. I apologize because I know you guys worked very hard on this, and you know these. I'm somewhat familiar with the order, but I can't think of it, and Ryan's not answering me right now.
All right, so.
That's all right. We'll go.
Crystal, am I right?
I got a
Yeah,
spreadsheet.
if it's not on the agenda that's been posted, we shouldn't discuss it, but we all apparently have a different one. I have 11 items on our agenda.
Yeah, I do too. So,
That's okay.
all right.
Well, if it's on the city website,
No, it's in our email.
no, I know, but we need it on the city website, which I know it's
not
not.
a posted one. I don't think it is. I think this was sent from Ryan.
It's not. I have a copy here, and we just have 10 items. The last one being from Councilor Bacon.
Okay.
Okay, never mind
So we
then.
send-
All right.
Yes.
Joe?
Night.
Councilor Sullivan, night. Thank you. Councilor Sullivan?
Well, if everybody's leaving, it doesn't matter, but I still don't, we have a standard disclaimer on every single public notice that these may not reflect all things that other business that may come before the body. And why can't we just do it as that?
I don't think that covers exactly something as specific as the order that we have. which I know we've been waiting for, you know, some, and I apologize again. It sounds like the work has now been done, but we weren't aware the work was done. So it's my opinion, the city solicitor just said she agreed with me that if we took up a discussion in that detail, we would be violating the open meeting law. And if
Mike.
not violating it, it certainly would be a perceptional violation.
Mike, I have some stuff for you, so I can talk to you tomorrow and set something up, okay?
Okay. Yep.
All right?
Great.
And then that stuff will all be shared with the council, okay?
Yep.
All
Wonderful.
right.
Yep.
Thank you.
Item number 9 is the next item. This is introduced by Councilor Anderson, Burgos, and McGee. The Finance Committee meet with the Parks and Rec Director and Ms. Farrader to discuss the community field developments. Both are with us. The chair will entertain a motion to take off the table for discussion.
So moved.
All those in favor? Any opposed? Terry Shepard, the director of our Parks Recreation Department, along with Laura Farrader, are here tonight to address this order, this update, both by Councilor McGee, who is the Ward 7 and former Ward 6, and Councilor Anderson Burgos, who's the Ward 6 councilor. I think we're all interested. So, ladies, Jared, did you want to start? Laura?
I can start. Thank you for having me. Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Okay, good.
Jerry is muted, just so she knows.
Okay. So we lost our granddaughter, 15-month-old Harper, in March. And I decided I wanted to build a playground at Community Field. Sorry. So I contacted Terry. Sorry,
Actually, Laura,
Okay.
I'll start for a second.
Okay, thanks, Terry.
I'm glad you got to meet Laura Farrader. She initiated this entire project in honor of Harper. She's raised a lot of money, and her goal is to have a tot lot, not a whole new playground, but a section of where the baby swings are, a tot lot in honor of Harper. So I'll pass it back to Laura.
Okay.
If you want to talk about what you've done with Bob Parent and even John Tuig about the actual design and the equipment.
Yes, thank you. So we enjoyed going to Community Field. I grew up on Hillside Avenue. Community Field has been my place for a long time. So we decided that we wanted to add and enhance the current playground there by building about 500 square foot area for toddlers and preschoolers. It would be with one large, it's called it's like a tree with things for kids under 2 years old. It'll have a poured rubber foundation. It'll be fenced in with one gate that's ADA accessible and the other side open to where the toddler and infant swings are. And a couple of sensory items, a couple of benches, a bench outside for parents. Let's see. So I've been working again with Terry, who's been wonderful, and with Bob Parent, who's also been wonderful, looking to plan this, to purchase the equipment all up to city standards. We're looking to the money. I've raised close to $35,000 since May.
Wow.
Yeah, it's coming together really nicely.
Amazing.
So we're looking to have Little Tykes do the whole project, including the installation, everything except for the fencing, which would be done with Hampshire fencing. Project 13, people have donated money to Project 13, which is a nonprofit here in Holyoke. Really more of a dropout prevention program, but that's where the money's been going. And so Project 13 will purchase and donate the completed project to the city of Holyoke for Community Field. There'll also be my boss has commissioned a statue of Harper, a bronze statue. It'll be made by the same by Skylight Services, who they're the folks who did the John DiNapoli Memorial. So there'll be a small Harper statue as part of the playground. So we're hoping to get this in by the fall. We're hoping to sign a contract, and so we're requesting the finance committee to endorse and support this private endorsement, private improvement to Community Field.
Yeah.
Very nice.
Exactly. The city oh, am I on?
Yep. Yes, you are.
The city hasn't accepted any money yet. It is all through private money. There'll be some in-kind services, I guess already has with Robert, the engineer. And so we're hoping, Robert has reviewed everything. It certainly is up to every standard and every code, that this private group will purchase the equipment and work with Bob on the installation. And right now we're just hoping for your support. And then once we accept the top playground, we would come back to the council. Well, that's what
Jerry, first of all, Laura, on behalf of all of us, we're very sorry for your granddaughter, and I think whatever we can do to support this effort certainly goes without saying. But
Absolutely.
Thank you for being involved, and
Thank you.
We appreciate that. And I think it's a wonderful idea the way you're doing it. And I remember going down for the DeNapoli statue for the people who did the DeNapoli. It's actually a memorial for all fallen police officers in Holyoke, and they are incredible artisans, but incredible service and vendor that this is what they offer. And I think that's a great choice. Terry, what we have before us is an order that we cannot take a formal vote on, other than that you've made a presentation. This part of which is going to be eventually a gift, through the construction of the Tots Playground. We have to be accepted. I'm going to defer to the auditor in the city solicitor at some point, but it would have to be accepted through proper channels, which would be just like accepting a grant. And certainly we can do that, as soon as it comes in. We may be able to do that right on the floor if we don't need further discussion. But it's I'm sure it'll be well supported, but the proper procedure has to take place. So with that in mind, from the committee, from other members, are there questions? Members of the order. Councilor Leahy?
Yeah, not a question. Just once again, this is amazing. Thank you so much. I'm so sorry for your loss, the loss. It's awful, terrible. What you're doing to do this is just, it's beautiful. And I can't wait to be at the ribbon cutting with you.
Thank you, Jim. And I used to babysit for Jim, so he can vouch. He can vouch for me.
They're not babies no more.
Laura, I was trying to limit my conversation because I have tears in my eyes, and I was actually going to start with that, but yes, she was wonderful. She is wonderful, and I feel so sad, but something positive is coming out of this, and this is just beautiful.
We're doing our best.
Yeah. And Laura, what will the name of the new tot spot be?
It'll be Harper's Haven. I forgot to say that. Yes, Harper's Haven. We're gonna do signs with a little with a rainbow on them, and people have really been very generous in their donations, and we're very excited about it, and hoping to get it going for the fall and really provide a nice, safe playground for young kids.
Nice.
Councilor Murphy?
Just first of all, yeah, let me offer my condolences as well. Do you know, have you reached the funds that you need, or are you still needing more money?
Well, I originally sought to raise $30,000. We've gone over. Of course, the project was, when I originally was planning on $30,000, I didn't know how much poured rubber cost. I learned that I had wanted 2 large pieces of equipment. We decided to pare it down to 1 large piece and 4 smaller things on the corner. So we're right about where we need to be. I have a couple of other people who I think are going to make some donations. So we're right in the ballpark of where we need to be.
Okay. Well, congratulations, and it's quite an honor you're providing. So.
Thank you.
Yes.
Jerry, do you have any questions about what I said? Want to touch base at a later date?
Terry, me? Terry,
well, I know everything looks so good. I just want to make sure that, that next step.
The only thing I'm not sure of, I don't know if you can pass it at your next meeting, because there's nothing to accept yet.
Well, that's fine. You know, if it's, you know, when it's ready.
Yeah,
No.
we're really hoping to get it constructed this fall, and it looks like we're on track for it. The equipment's picked out, and I think everything is in order just about.
Great.
Sounds good. Councilor Murphy?
Do we have to accept that money before we can make the construction?
We're not accepting the money.
Well, the issue is, if I can answer that, because it does get a little tricky, and the auditor's still with us, I think. I don't know. Our city solicitor, I feel bad, was here for an item that's not on the agenda. But we accept the grant the same way we also have to accept gifts. Because the city cannot raise money as a city. This can be done. It's like Wisteria Hearst. It's like the money that the Historic Commission does for the windows upstairs in City Hall. You know, it's projects that can be done, but they have to be accepted as a gift. And it's a little trickier than a grant. But it's just, it's before money can be spent, it needs to be approved, appropriated by the mayor, the appropriation approved by the city council.
Well, we were working that on the premise that Laura's group can construct the project. We'll get the liability and work. I've already worked a little bit with purchasing in the law department, and they're working with the engineer, get the project built. They're actually going to purchase the equipment and work with us with contractors to get it built, and then turn it over to the city as a gift. So I don't think the city will deal with money at all, just accept the gift when it's done.
I don't have any objections to it, but, you know.
That's a piece we're working on now to make sure everything's covered.
I know, I understand. And I don't see the city saying no.
Yep.
So, but if you get, you know, what I'm saying though is, well, we'll stop there.
I do.
Project.
We'll make sure it's all as it should be.
Okay. Any further discussion? Councilor Bartley.
Yeah. First of all, my condolences. I'm very sorry for your loss, and thank you for this tremendous gift. Terry, just so I'm clear. So, was there a vote by the Park and Rec Commission on this?
It's funny. We had a meeting scheduled for this Wednesday, but it looks like we might have to reschedule. Yes, they're aware of it and they know it's happening.
Okay, so first of all, I'm grateful that we have it here and we can bring it before the full city council, and certainly we'd want to promote as much this as well as we could from our end on the city website or whatever. But it seems to me like this should really go through the Park and Rec Commission. If you recall that situation we had a few years ago with Dennis Walsh.
Oh yeah, this isn't like that, Councilor.
No, nothing could be like that. But I'm just saying, my hope is that the Park Commission would, because you guys control the community field,
correct,
right? Okay.
No, so far very supportive, but they haven't had a plan to approve yet. That's why we're getting down to the nitty gritty now. So I was hoping that they could officially vote on it this week, but it might be next week before they see the plan.
Right. So I don't really see a role for the city council on this other than to be as supportive as we can. And I'm grateful that we know about it, but the funds are not being held by any city entity as far as I can tell. And the beneficiary of the funds will be the, essentially community field, the Park and Rec Commission.
Correct.
So I'm not clear what role we have. So, which is good news because we probably can't screw it up then. But I want to make sure that the Park and Rec Commission really kind of carries the ball, unlike that fiasco we had with Veterans Park.
Well, they are. No, this is more of a formality, I guess, that the council. If it was money, the council would have to approve it, or a grant. It's the same as approving a grant or a donation.
Yeah, but we're not getting the city of Holyoke is not receiving any monies.
Correct.
I guess. So it's going to the organization, which I believe in the spirit of reference called, I wrote Project 13 in my notes, so I hope I got it right. And so it looks like they're going to kind of administer it for us. So
absolutely. But then they're giving it to the city. Totally. They're not going to own this when it's all done.
The Park and Rec Commission.
Laura's group. They're giving a giant gift to the city, and just because of the dollar amount, because of its value, the council needs to approve it.
Okay, thank you.
Any further discussion? As far as tonight goes in this order, the way it's worded, it's an update request. I would suggest that the order's been complied with. We can modify any motions at the next full city council, but I think we got.
I second that, Joe.
Motion made, second, that the order's been complied with. Any discussion on the motion? And in spirit, I think it means, Laura and Terry, that we are certainly accepting the project. We just want to get the
Absolutely.
formalities done at a later date.
Mhm.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
So moved. Thank you, ladies, very much. Well done.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Good night. Final item for the evening. Chair will entertain a motion to take item 10 off the table.
Joe, let's take 10 off the table.
All those in favor? Nobody's
Aye.
opposed. This is an order filed by Councilor Bacon in order that any transfers from the personnel budget line items to overtime, which would be code numbers 51300 through 51399, would require approval by the city council. Councilor Bacon, you make of the order, if you could lead us into what you're looking for.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In a sense, this is sort of a cleanup order, because when I had filed the original one so that we would be aware of how these monies were being transferred, because I wasn't all that familiar with the spreadsheets and how the numbers run, I neglected to include these in order for the council to be able to have that approval part. So it's really just a cleanup order to extend it to those line items.
Can you remind me, those line items are they in ordinance form or?
We did it through ordinance, and that's why we're getting the reports each month. And it's also why we are handling the ones where the people are out injured, even though those are sort of routine, because it's along all the lines of those transfers so that we could really know what was going on in those expense accounts. And it's just that these were not captured, and they actually ideally should have been in the first order in the first place.
So are you asking that we ask the city council to set up a policy, or do you think this should be an ordinance form too?
I'm basically just asking that we would add this to the current ordinance. It's just extending the budget lines from where they ran to in the first order to running them a little bit further in this order. So it would be an amendment. But I think it could be handled either way, but in order for it to become routine, if finance sees this as an appropriate thing to do and the council agrees, then we could send it over to ordinance to put it in ordinance form.
Okay. I've told you myself, I'm interested in this. I think after what we saw last year, it's a necessary step. Unfortunately, it's, well, I don't want to say it's micromanaging, but things are being transferred and then retransferred.
Right.
We lose total control out of this part of the budget. I'm not interested that we see injured on duty every city council meeting.
I know, but it just fell in the
covered.
line.
But this one, I think we need to be more on top of, so I agree with you. Is there any other discussion? Chair will entertain a motion. I think if we agree with Councilor Bacon's order, that we recommend that that we put it in the ordinance committee for the purpose of putting it in ordinance form.
Moved.
So moved.
So moved. Now, someone remind me, Councilor Bartley, when we do this, does this have to go back to the full city council then to ordinance? Or can we just send it right over?
Right over.
Right over? Okay, I have no problem with that. I just don't know sometimes with the technical of those rules that we adopt,
Well, I just don't want it to get lost.
Ryan, are you with us? I'll follow up with Ryan, but what we're doing is making a motion that we agree with this and recommend to the ordinance committee that they recommend to the full, put it in ordinance form and recommend to the full city council that we adopt it. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed?
Aye.
So moved. Thank you, everyone. I think it was a pretty good agenda for the middle of August, and I appreciate everybody's that joined us and everybody that was here this evening. And we wish the Tallmans a lot of best wishes. There's an emergency. Well,
Oh, I didn't. I was late. I worked late today. Sorry.
on a motion to adjourn is what I think I heard. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? We stand adjourned.
Thank you.
Stay safe.